Hello, welcome to the Struggle Bus. My name is Nullifus, and today we're going to be taking a look at your routes. I did something similar to this a little while ago where I attempted to improve your scenery, and this is going to be in the same style. I asked you guys to submit your maps on my Discord, where I would then take a few, talk about some of the problems I noticed, and what I would do to fix them. However, one piece of feedback I did get from the scenery video was that everything was too basic. I didn't go hard enough, and I agree. Routes are much more my specialty, so instead of stopping at 3, I'll take a look at 6. Each one of these will show off a different idea, but before we get to that, I do want to mention a quick warning. I did specifically ask for maps that people were unhappy with, so I don't want to see anything negative about the maps themselves in the comments. Feel free to disagree with my adjustments and points, but the builders I'll be highlighting today took a risk in sharing a project they admitted had some problems, and it would be pretty lame if people tried to make fun of them for it. So if I see it, I'll just delete your comment, so don't even try. However, if you would have done something different or you disagree with something I'm doing, then feel free to let me know. That's totally fair game. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. The first map here is a bit of a doozy. No, it's not that bad, I promise, but it is tech. Tech being one of those styles where adjusting one corner can very easily throw off the rest of the map. But I'll talk more about that later. For now, here's Antique Brass by Svel Galder. The world record is being shown on the screen, and no, that's not dirt. It's a mod pack, but it did take me a second of driving to realize what surface it was. Overall, I think the route isn't that bad, but there are a few issues I think would make a hunting session less fun. Once you start getting used to the route and pushing corners, it's very easy to get gear 5. And you can even hear the world record release gas for a second to prevent the gear up in several spots. I'll also want to take a look at the awkward corners starting at the 3rd turn. Not the worst combination, but driving it feels a bit off to me. Near the end, I also noticed a double left drift, which can easily lead to a no slide, so I generally stay away from them whenever I can. And the ending has a really weird turn geometry that never felt good to me. Those were the immediate things I noticed after driving the map for a while, and I thought this would be a really good example of turn shapes and speed control, so let's see what I came up with. Alright, and starting off with the building process, I'm just going to be taking a look at this first set of drifts here. Well, it's not the first set of drifts, but the first set of drifts that I do want to take a look at. The reason why I'm taking a look at these is because the drifts originally were very shallow. They didn't take away much speed from the player, which led into those accidental gear ups to gear 5 around this mark. So I'm just deleting the drifts, my goal is going to be to make them sharper, and just to reduce the speed of the player more, so that way they don't get gear 5. And just to let you guys know, in case you aren't familiar with the format that I do, I'm just rambling. There's no script. I'm just kind of watching the same sped up footage and giving my thoughts on what I was doing at that time. And you can see here that I'm really just trying to get this second drift here sharper. Like I said, slow down speed, don't get the gear up. But another thing that you'll end up noticing that I do a lot is that I am test driving. I will place like 1-2 blocks and then immediately hop into test driving, and that's for me, that's kind of my workflow, is in order to tell if a route is actually smooth to drive, I need to drive it, and I need to drive it a lot, and that's going to be my goal. Another thing to keep in mind, or at least I'm trying to keep in mind while building this, is that there's the rest of the map that I have to connect to. Like right there, you can see I'm trying to line it up, trying to imagine how I'm going to connect this to the rest of the map. If I was just building without the rest of the map, then, I could go in whatever direction I want, but I am trying to keep that in mind, and it does make it a little tricky. And the drift that I have there, it kind of works, but only if you take it on the outside, which is why I put the poles there in the first place, to just force the player to take it on the outside, go exactly where I want them to go, so it does feel a bit smoother. And now I'm trying to take a look at how to connect this to the rest of the map. I am one block above where I really want to be to connect it smoothly, and I'm trying to figure out a good way to get the get down a block, but given which side of the road that I naturally want to be on exiting the drift, it's proving to be a bit of a challenge. But I'm going to go ahead, swap that the one bank to the other side bank in one block. I'm going to use a custom block to turn that into a 2-block long. I generally try to stick with vanilla, but if there is something that I think would work well with custom blocks, I'm not afraid to use a little bit of custom blocks. Way too many transitions. It's a great set. What can I say? Don't want to overuse it, though, as I do think tech, you want to stick with mostly the vanilla blocks. But one thing I do like about that turn as well is you can change the banking from the left side banking to the right side banking. You can use that to initiate the drift, which I actually think ends up quite nicely. But I don't know if you noticed that real quick, but that drift I was testing out quite a bit, and when I was drifting it, it didn't feel right to me. So instead of practicing the drift to make it work and to see if I then liked it, I did a few runs where I kind of ignored where the walls were on the map, and I just drifted to what felt like a natural good drift, and I saw that it led into the wall, so I moved the turn to kind of go where I naturally wanted the car to go. And I think it's one of those things that I think is kind of tricky to keep in mind, where it's kind of like a balancing act. You want to drive your map a lot to make sure that it is smooth, but the more that you drive a map, the better you're going to get at it, and the harder it is to like it the it's no longer like awkward. If you practice it enough, it just becomes the map. But you obviously, if you're looking to make things not awkward, you kind of have to fight that feeling of just like, oh yeah, I got used to this turn, it's fine. And it's like, no, you still gotta keep it in mind. But here you can see that I'm really struggling to attach this to the rest of the map, and I forgot to place a block there. That's great. So I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do, but this exit with the jump thing, I'm trying to get a transition in, and it's a little too tight, so I put something else in. I try that. But when I go ahead and drive it, I go flying a little too far. So I'm not a big fan of that. But if you do pay attention, like the kind of ratio of how much I'm driving versus how much I'm actually building, I think when I'm making a route, I'm actually driving more than I'm building. And if you're struggling with routes and you find that you aren't test driving that much, like that's probably why you're struggling with routes so much. But also it comes with time. Like the better you are as a player, the more easily you can spot these things. The more stuff you have in your toolbox at your disposal to be able to fix these things. So it's also just a matter of experience as well in putting in the time and effort. But let's see. So since I can't really line up the rest of the route, I just kind of delete. I just get rid of the part that I'm struggling to line up with, and I'll try to line it up later down the road, which is what I'm trying to do right now. And so I'm kind of looking, seeing if there's like maybe a nice little drop down that I can do, maybe onto a jump, maybe onto like a ramp. Trying to figure that out. But another thing that you'll notice as I'm going through is I'm test driving over and over again, and then I'm slowly moving on to the next little bit. So I'm not tackling sections out of order. I'm starting at the beginning and I'm going to the end, because if you skip to another part of the map, like, it might work well, but then once you get to an earlier part of the map, that might not work well. So you change that, but now the setup no longer works with the part that you already hammered out, and now you have to get rid of it again. So yeah, I do it in order, slowly moving on to the next little bit of section. And honestly, since I was having trouble with elevations in this part, I just did a drop down, and it actually ended up working pretty smoothly. I was a little surprised, but also happy with how that turned out. Lined up very well with the next little bit of track, and since the car does spend some time in the air, it's you're not really in any danger of getting gear 5. So making those drifts, those first few drifts, sharper to make the player lose more speed, and also adding a little bit of airtime in kind of like the stretch where you aren't really drifting, you aren't really slowing the player down. Adding that little bit of airtime kind of guarantees that you can never get 5th gear. So that's nice. I feel like I've tackled that issue. I'm fairly happy with where it is, but now I am going to try to tackle this double left-hand drift here. And my idea is pretty simple. Since the two left-hand drifts are very close to each other, there's only like the checkpoint separating them. I'm actually just going to get rid of the checkpoint, because I mean, we have another checkpoint that's not even 5 seconds before it, so I think we can get away with getting rid of this checkpoint. We've got another one close by. I take another look at the drop down, but I don't think I change anything from it. I think I had like one awkward corner, but taking another look, driving it, yeah, it's fine. It's fine for now. But before I move on to taking care of that double left turn and making that all nice and stuff, I do make sure to take the time to revisit the previous checkpoints as well, since driving one checkpoint over and over again, you can practice it, make it good and everything, and then revisiting some past checkpoints, you forget what some of the other drifts look like, and it can help point out some awkward places that you need to take another look at. But here, I feel confident enough moving on to this. Well, it used to be a double left drift until I shrunk it down into a single left drift, which I think works a lot better. And now I'm once again trying to make this connect with the previous. Well, not the previous. I'm trying to make this connect with the track that's already there. And this one's going to be a little tricky, just because we have the route. If you see it in kind of like where the drop down is right now, the previous route before is right there. You're almost hitting it, so we don't have that much room to go off of. Oh, and just as a side note, to the people, Svel, if you're watching this right now, I will be deleting the scenery. If the scene, not all of it, but if the scenery is in the way, and to anyone who's submitted a map, if the scenery is in the way, I will remove it. I'm sorry, but this is a route video. It's not a scenery video. And if you're fixing the route and the sceneries are right against the route, you're going to have to get rid of it. But here I'm trying to test some ways to get back on the route, and maybe another way to control speed. I tried a few things. I didn't really like the way they turned out, so I'm actually going to try a drop down again. It worked last time, and having the same sort of elements multiple times in a map can actually, like, it's not just a one-off thing. Now it's an intentional design choice in the map. So I'm not afraid of doing the drop down again, especially since it's not the exact same. You can almost use it to set up a drift. I don't remember quite if that corner was a drift or not, but yeah, I feel once again here it actually feels fairly smooth. So I'm gonna go ahead and use it, keep it there. And now I'm trying to tackle this end. I'm going to go through a few iterations, so bear with me. But the end geometry, I'm not a fan of. The drift setup is super awkward. I never got it to feel good. I was constantly hitting corners on my runs and stuff. So yeah, I'm going to try to keep it a little bit here just to see if maybe the drift was a little too tight. Maybe if I relax the exiting angle, it'll feel a little bit better, but nah, it's not feeling very good. But I'm going to take a look at shortening this one instead of a little brake tap to turn it into more of an actual drift. But I settle with the slant here. The slant here feels pretty good. You end up on the inside. Oh wait, no, never mind. That's not what I. that's not what I end up going with. But something like this. I like the idea of a slant. Is to me, flat drifts can be a little tricky to start, especially if you're just turning, whereas slants, I don't know, it feels like a lot more of a natural drift start to me, and I don't know, I just tend to like them a bit better. But here I am, I'm using, so we go from slant back to flat, and I'm testing to see if you can use that slant back to flat to initiate the drift into the finish. And also, if you saw me flying off the map there, I was testing to see if I could jump directly to the fin, but that's not, it doesn't look like that's quite possible. But if you can tell from the sped up driving footage, I am hitting the wall a lot, and that's not really that much of a good sign. So once again, I'm trying a little airtime jump thing, but nah, that doesn't really work. So I'm trying, I'm literally just placing one block at a time and driving it over and over again until it feels somewhat good. This one I want to test further, so I end up putting in another flat and then maybe a little jump transition into the finish. Maybe that'll work. But driving it, like, yeah, it feels okay, but that jump doesn't work. Not quite. So I'm going to take another. Like, it was, you kept hitting the wall was too close on the left-hand side there, so I tried a left turn, tried to get that wall around it, but it's a little too awkward. I'm still hitting that wall. You have to brake a little more than you initially think, which makes it a little awkward. You can't really tell what the drift shape is like, so I'm just trying another, maybe a sharper drift. Comes a little more after, but I noticed that in a lot of the drifts too, I'm ending up going wide. I'm getting nowhere close to the apex of the drift. So I try, instead of a 1x1, a 2x2, and that actually ends up working out fairly well. It feels pretty good. And here I kind of noticed something interesting. So I noticed that the 1x1 swapping from one bank angle to the other, you can actually kind of use that as a jump. And so I'm thinking, like, what if that's a potential risky fin? Because it feels like a natural part of the route to jump off there. So it's kind of like a pseudo risky fin. And that actually ends up working out quite well. I like it a lot. So I start back from the finish, or sorry, start back at the very start. I drive everything, try to see if anything is really standing out in a bad way, but I do hit the side of the wall of the finish there. So I add one more finish gate on the left to kind of create, that little shelf that you can drive through. And that seems to work out fairly well. I end up liking it a lot. So I drive from the start again. I'm going to drive it over and over just to see if there's anything else that I want to change or if things feel pretty good. And I'm fairly happy with the changes, so I jump into the validator. This is me validating the track right now. And I'm doing this because, well, one, I want to be able to kind of like set a decent time, but also to me I don't know if it happens to other people, but to me there's kind of like a mental shift between just playtesting, starting from the route and playtesting versus actually validating. To me, it's easier to get into the actual like hunting mindset, And so right now I am grinding for the best time I possibly can. And if there is anything awkward that I don't like, then I'm going to be thinking about it a lot more here. It's going to become a lot more apparent because I am forcing myself to drive over and over again, hunting for the best time. And once again, it is more of a skill between like practicing a map and not being too complacent, if that makes sense. Because as you drive a map over and over again, the parts that might seem awkward at first smooth over quite a bit. But it's you don't want that too much, to the point where the awkward parts you're fine with because you've driven them so much they're not awkward anymore, because then you convince yourself that it's fine, but then other people drive it like in map review or something and they end up not liking the map at all, and you're just like, what, why, it's fine. But maybe to someone taking a look at the map at the first time, it's not fine. But the last point I do want to make, because I don't think I make any more changes as I'm validating the map. I don't find anything else. And the reason why I said this map was a doozy at the very beginning is because it's tech. And tech is one of those styles where I do not rush the process. I am rushing the process here, but one thing that you will not see that I normally like to do is that once I'm done with a tech route, I'm going to sit and I'm going to leave it be for at least 2 or 3 days. That way I forget a lot of the initial decisions that I was making, and I can come back to the route with a much fresher mind and see if the ideas that I had, are they still smooth? Do they still feel good to drive now that the ideas aren't so fresh? But unfortunately, I'm not gonna do that here because I do want this video to come out this year, so I'm not, I'm not going to do that. But here's just my general beginning thought processes, especially working with tech, just placing a couple blocks, driving it over and over again, thinking a lot more about speed control. If you do find yourself gearing up to 5, don't just take a look at the drift before, take a look at the drift before that drift as well, and see what you can do to tighten those corners up, make the player lose more speed, and maybe even add a little bit of airtime into the route as well to help prevent those gear ups. But with that, I think that's everything that I have for this map. I'm just going to let the final validation run play through. Thank you, Svel, for submitting the map, and hopefully you like the changes, or hopefully everyone learned a little something from working on tech. The next map might be one that you recognize. It's chiaroscuro. I'm sure that's close enough. By Fecklefeck. This was a track of the day map, and while I found it to be quite enjoyable, it did have some mixed reviews. So I loaded into the map again to see what I could spot. Just looking at the world record, it might be hard to see, but there are some definite gear issues. That first gear up into 4th happens in the middle of a turn, and you're forced into swapping back and forth between 4th and 5th throughout the route. Gear changes aren't inherently bad, but can lessen the satisfaction and make players feel like they're doing something wrong, even when they aren't. Outside of the gears, the only other thing I noticed is that the ending geometry during this section is a bit weird. It's hard to tell exactly what the block shapes are or when they change. Given the fast acceleration on plastic, gear issues are much more common, but it's also my favorite style. So let's see how I would tackle these issues and maintain that speed. And going on to editing the route, the first thing is that awkward gear into 4, just right in the middle of the turn with the plastic. All I'm gonna do is just replace that piece of plastic with some road. That way, the car, by the time it enters the plastic, it's already gear 4. You don't even have to worry about it, and I like that. I like that change. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to look to get rid of that reactor engine off kind of section. I mean, we have plastic. This is supposed to be Gear 4 plastic. So we have plastic, fast acceleration. I already mentioned that. And comboed with the reactor, you are going to get gears like nothing else. You're gonna get to 5 ridiculously fast. So when I'm working in gear 4, I tend to just not worry about it. So in this case, I will give a warning. I did work on this beginning section already, but I didn't say, or I forgot to record, so I rage quit for like a day. But besides that, so I already have like an idea of what I want, so I am working a lot faster than the previous map, at least in the beginning section here. You'll see a lot more trial and error in the future. Oh, in the next couple parts of this map, but I also don't quite remember what I did, so there is still some experimentation going on here. So I am trying to tighten some corners, keep that gear 4, but if you'll notice, the gearbox right now it is going to 3. Yeah, this is too tight of a corner, so I do have to pull it back out. This was one of the sections in the map that did net the player. The player did get gear 5 fairly consistently, especially once they play the map for a while and we're getting pretty good at keeping speed through these sections. I am trying some way too many transitions here. I don't want to rely on them too heavily, as there is a bit of a meme of new players, once they discover way too many transitions, they only use those, and it can compromise the route a little bit, making it, like, I guess, too flowy, if that makes sense. Like, there's like everything, there's no challenge, everything just flows together way too well. So I'm trying not to rely on it too heavily, but I'm trying to get to that next checkpoint, and things just aren't quite lining up. I don't really remember what I did beforehand. But you'll also notice something else that I'm working on, and that is I'm including a little bit of airtime, whether it's that small little drop down there, or, maybe a little jump to the next checkpoint. And that is going to be one of my primary ways of handling that gear 5, or trying to stay away from gear 5. So I changed one of the blocks to shift this down a little bit more to hopefully make that jump a little bit smoother, a little bit better. And if we look here, I think it works. So yeah, that ends up working fairly nicely. I like it, at least. And now I think I'm ready to move on to the next section. And this is probably the biggest problem in the map in terms of gears, is this giant, like, just straight section. So you're going straight and you're going downhill and you're on plastic, which means you're getting gear 5 pretty much no matter what you do. So my first goal is going to just kind of get rid of that straightaway. Like, we don't need that long of a straight going through this. So I'm going to try adding maybe a transition or two, getting that little pop of airtime, because when the car is in the air, it's not accelerating, and when the car lands, it's going to take a second or two to kind of like catch back up to the speed that you land with. Hopefully that makes sense. But it can really help with the it can still really help with maintaining speed, or I guess making sure the player doesn't gain too much speed. Also, I'm sorry. I know there's an RPG route through this. I've played it, but I will be compromising the RPG route if it means fixing the route, because that's what this video is about. I'm so sorry. But here, I'm kind of just testing here. I'm going to add a little drop down, a little bit of airtime. This is a transition I have used before, and I actually kind of like how it sets up that left hand. It's a very simple transition, but you kind of want to land angled to the left and use that curve, kind of like ride the outside of the curve to very nicely set up for this left hand turn here. And since I'm so worried about that straightaway before the turn, I'm actually just going to turn before the turn and just not really worry about it. Yeah, I'm gonna basically take that turn and move it more forward before the car gets the opportunity to gear up. I am going to cut off that checkpoint there. I am going to move it, but I actually honestly it ends up working out really well, like way better than I had imagined. So I ended up moving a couple of the checkpoints since they were very close to each other at this point. And yeah, and works out really well. Like it looks pretty smooth to me, even watching back. And then the next little bit is going to be at the top here. This little ending geometry. You can see that ledge. It kind of gets hidden from this point of view. So I'm gonna get rid of that block. I think it disguises it a little too much, and just having it so that the block comes after it doesn't like nearly match up with everything, just make that break a little more obvious, and it's going to get players off that wall because they realize that you can't really be there. I'm also going to add a little bit more to that uphill section there, make it a little more forgiving so you can get a more inside and direct line to the checkpoint. And honestly, I think that's pretty much it. I might go back and edit like a couple of smaller things, but these are the large edits that I had in mind, and now it's basically completely Gear 4 without any Gear 5 issues, and the visibility is a lot more. There's no more awkward gears anywhere. The first gear is fine, just calculating shadows, making sure everything is good, and I'm going to now just basically validate the map. Everything still looks really good. No areas too dark since I am, looking to validate entering that kind of hunt session. This did not take nearly as much time as the previous map because, like I said before, previous map tech takes forever, but also plastic. Plastic is my favorite surface to build and to drive on. I just think it's really fun and versatile, and I'm pulling on my past experience here. When I say add stuff to your toolbox, like that transition, that transition right there, I have used that transition before, and I really liked it. So when I'm talking about adding different things to your toolbox, that is exactly what I'm talking about. It comes with experience. The more you make routes, the more you solve problems, just the more you understand, have more things at your disposal. I think it's time for some Bob, which means the next map is On Air Route 2025 by Sir Birdie. This is a faster Bob map, which automatically means some players will hate it without even giving it a chance. But it also features some drifts, which I think is a nice change of pace. Thankfully, Sir Birdie let the tires mostly thaw before starting the drifts, which for a faster map like this one, I think was the right choice. The route itself isn't super complicated. Bob maps do tend to be a bit simpler than most, but there are still a couple things I want to take a look at. I'm not a fan of the speed check right at the beginning, as it's overly punishing, and it's the only time on the map having less speed gets actively punished. and the setup to the second drift never felt that good to me, as well as that end. I'll be taking a look at both of those, as well as some awkward dead zones. Given the drifts take place after the tires have thawed, there's already some parts of the map where not much is happening, so I'll be keeping an eye out for spots where I can trim back on those. Now that we have some goals, let's get to building. And getting on with the building process, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the speed check. I'm going to replace it with a softer sloped landing, because honestly, if you are too slow for the speed check, then you're going to be slower regardless. You don't really need something else to bump you off the course to let you know. And since it's the only speed check on the map, I don't really think it fits what the map is going for, so I just got rid of it. The beginning of the second drift here is, I didn't really like the setup to it, so I replaced it with grass. Maybe it'll give players more of an opportunity to get the right angle, but no, it didn't. I don't think I made it through the turn once smoothly while trying it out. So I replaced it, instead of a 2 long flat to half banked, I used a custom 3 long half or flat to half banked, and that ended up working out pretty well. So I really like that. It gave a much more smoother entry. It's a small change, but I think it was nice. And then for this bob turn, I don't know if you caught it right there, but the turn was not perfectly smooth the entire way around. There was quite a bit, it went to like a diagonal turn like halfway through, and the entry to the turn was also rushed, so I added one more block before the turn actually starts so players can line it up a bit better. And then I turned the turn into the same blocks. It would be a lot smoother. And here I'm just trying to get the exit out so you can go nice down the grass quarter pipe, and that's kind of it. There was an ending here, but honestly it was really easy to misjudge the ending, especially with icy tires, and I did not like the ending at all. So this time I'm actually going to extend the map quite a bit, because we have maybe 3 bob sections, 2 drifts, and for me, if you are trying to combine these styles, I think you need a bit more than that. So I'm going to try to add maybe 1 more drift and maybe 1 small bob section, and that I think would be a really good combination of both the bob and drifting. And since we're coming off the grass quarter pipe, the icy tire should be pretty much gone by now. And 3 drifts, 3 bobs. Okay, so spoiler alert, I add another bob turn later, but 3 drifts, 3 bobs, that seems like a pretty good I guess combination of the 2 styles. But here I'm trying out this final drift, and it's okay, but it's not really working that great, especially this entry. I don't like the entry. So I'm making it a bit of an auto drift, just like a little bit of an auto slide getting onto the pavement, and then the manual drift comes after, and I'm just trying to set that up. Once again, you saw the tech earlier. I am placing blocks down, seeing what feels smooth coming out of this, and that seems to be pretty good right there. I'm crashing on both sides of the roads. Oh, no, hold on. Not yet. Sorry, I don't remember everything that I did during these, but yeah, so here, still testing a little bit, because if I turn more to the right, just kind of follow through the exit, replace that with the longer S-bend. There we go. That looks a little bit better. Getting into more of a manual drift. Okay, I do end up with the 2x2 with the S-bend. There we go. I thought I did that, and took a bit more of a roundabout way to get there. And I'm going to add 1 more bob turn, like I said earlier, and this one is going to lead into the finish. And I feel like that's a good mashup of these 2 styles. I do kind of want to add one more checkpoint at the end, so you can't just shortcut or anything like that. But we'll go ahead and drive the whole thing, see if everything feels smooth, because especially with Bob, typically you want things to feel smooth, specifically with faster Bob maps, and since this is in Gear 5, yeah, you want things to be smooth. So here, just driving over and over again, trying to pay attention to see how consistently can I get good Bob setups. And it's a good Bob turn when the car stays in the same area. So even though the footage is being sped up, if the car looks like it's practically standing still on the Bob turn, that's a really good turn. And then combined with these drifts here, honestly, I'm having fun with this too. This is a pretty nice, flowy, smooth route. It didn't need that much. I guess, like change to, I feel like, make it into something that works out pretty well. But one more change I am going to make is I do feel like the ending section is a bit cramped. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to add one more block, just to make it a bit smoother. I guess I was hitting the outside edge a little too often, and I'm also going to change that into a three long half banked to flat. Just, I guess the two, it was a little too easy to get airtime throughout it, and it just throws the drift off. But with the three, much more smooth, goes all the way to the end, and that feels pretty good. I believe those are all the edits I make to the route. Now I'm just hunting it, trying to get the best time I possibly can, just to make sure everything works. And really the big thing is, with these faster Bob routes, they typically focus on being more smooth, like I said earlier. So if you are building one of these, make sure that that everything flows together really well. Flow is very important when it comes to Bob, because it's all about those turn entries. Once you're in the middle of a turn, you don't really want to do too much, but you want to set them up correctly. And that's why it's really important on Bob maps to make sure you give enough room for the entry. If there's a problem with the turn, the first place you should be looking is the entry. And I do want to say something about the irregular turn that was near the end there before I changed it. And you can have irregular turns, but since all the other turns here were really smooth, it felt a little odd to me that one was irregular and the others weren't. So I did change it to be regular, but those irregular turns where the turn shape gets swapped up, those are very punishing, especially for newer players who might not be taking the entries that well. And if you want to build a beginner friendly, or like maybe more of a track of the day style Bob route, I would recommend against irregular turns, as the only real way to survive them is if you are in the perfect spot for the turn already. But beginner players, they struggle, they fishtail a lot, and those bumps and stuff are just going to completely throw them out. This next one is probably the most track of the day ready, but apparently the map review server didn't think so. At least that's what Ludbanon said when they submitted Filippo. Looking to improve your routes doesn't just happen when you're in the middle of building, and I also think that this route is pretty good without any major issues. However, that's on a base level, and like I just said, the map review server did have some problems with it. I tried my best to look through and spot where players might have issues, specifically where players driving through the map for the first time might encounter some difficulties. The best tip I can give for this is that when you do submit to the map review server, don't drive your own map. Instead, watch other players and pay attention to where they crash. If a lot of people are making the same mistake, especially on multiple runs, you might need to adjust something. But for now, I want to take a look at that starting area, as it did take me a second to get what was going on. The first drift also feels a little bit weird, but it might be fine, and the ending has a very finicky gear that even the world record drops. So let's see if there's something I can do to smooth that out. So this is going to be the shortest build section because I don't think that there's too much that needs to be taken a look at. But I'm first going to start off with the route by placing scenery. It's not really scenery. I just blocked off that immediate turn to the right because I did want to experiment with it a little bit when I first opened the map. And I think, especially map review, even if players waste like 10-20 seconds on the start just kind of going through, then it can mess. That's time. I mean, you only have 3 minutes. That's not an insignificant chunk of time throughout that. I did also take a look at that first drift, but with the way the turn was set up, I didn't really see a great way on how to adjust it. And honestly, the drift, it works. Like if you get it perfectly, then it feels pretty good. But if you're off by a little bit, then the drift feels a little weird. So I kind of left it. I didn't really know what to do, and honestly, it was mostly fine. So for this section here, I'm just making sure that players know where to go, and basically, I just really paid attention to when I was driving the map the first time, or the first few times, and for a split second on where like, okay, I'm not sure where to go here. Or like I kind of make an educated guess on where I think the route will go. That's where I know I need to add a bit more guidance. And then at the end here, you do drop the gear, or it's very easy to drop the gear. The world record does it. So I'm just going to extend that dirt out where you would drop the gear and make it so you don't have to turn as sharply. A little easier to keep it. And also I notice at the end, it's really easy to fly too far to the right and crash against the wall, even if you did drop the gear previously. So I'm going to experiment with making the end itself a lot wider, but since you are dipping into the ground here, there's not really a great way on how to do that, especially with the 2 block long dipping into the ground kind of block. So I try to free block and I try to place things, but the wall in between doesn't disappear, and I would want this to be 2 blocks wide, and with 1 block wide it's not going to work. So I get rid of this and I make a little turn jump here. Yep, just gotta find the right blocks. There we go. And just a really simple turn jump into the finish. If this is too boring, you can change it. I know it's not the most exciting finish, but it's a finish. And it seems to work out pretty well. So I start hunting the map, make sure everything feels like correct, nothing's too jarring or out of place. And going back a little bit to paying attention to when you're driving a map for the first couple times, this is why I recommend watching other people in map review, because like you built the map. You're never going to be able to get to a point where you don't know what the map is. Like you built it. You're always going to have some idea, even if you leave it alone and come back to it. So that's why it's really important to watch other players. And if a lot of people are crashing the same spots, yeah, you might have to take a look at that. So when I drove the map for the first time, even if I had to make an educated guess and I was correct, I know that I've been playing this game for years, and I can't expect other players to have that same level of like familiarity with the game, with the meta, where you can expect things to typically go. Whenever that happens, or whenever I'm driving a map for the first time, I pay attention to where I do have to make those educated guesses. And if someone is wondering why they can't make it through map review, I come back and I tell them to touch up those spots. Wow, I feel so calm. That must mean it's time for At Peace by Cotton. This is a speed tech route, and I don't really want to repeat myself too much this video, so I'm also going to focus on other aspects besides just the drifts. And since the map is in Gear 5 anyway, I don't have to worry about that speed, which was a large part of the other tech map. That being said, there are a few drifts I want to tighten up and get feeling smoother, so I'll still be adjusting those. The main reason I picked this map though is because there are a couple places where the route is quite blind. We'll get to the actual details a bit later, but the main places I'm going to touch up are the start, as that drop down is pretty punishing right off the bat, this weird hop section as the turn before puts the player in a really bad spot, this extended line where it might as well be a straightaway, and the end, as I don't think there's enough room to properly set up the drift. Even when you don't have to worry about gears, tech is still a very tricky style to build. All right, and starting off with the building here, I am going to just completely get rid of the little turn at the start, because if you made the turn, but then if you misaligned it, since you're in the air for so long, you can't really correct it. You just get thrown off and you have to restart. So it's just not really like that great or fun, honestly. And so I change the start to where you just have to press forwards. That way you don't have this little weird turn that you can fail before the map even starts. And I also move the landing position, or I move the entire start and the landing one to the right. That way it's not just a straight line into this drift, because turning a little left before and then puts you in a really good position to then drift to the right. And you typically don't want to just drift coming out of a straight line. You generally want to be heading at some sort of like opposite angle. So since we're heading to the left, we can drift to the right. And that's why I moved the start and landing position to the right. Now I'm taking a look at this drift here and how it's leading into this little hop section that I don't really like. Obviously with drifts though, you're still gonna, it's kind of the same idea of just putting some blocks down, testing it, see how it feels. And maybe other people have a really easy time with this. Maybe I don't know, maybe I'm the only one that struggles with it, but at least for me, a lot of the tech turns and stuff like that, I do have to kind of feel out to see if they are correct or not. I thought the landing was a little like rough, or you didn't really land exactly where I wanted the car to land on the landing zone. So I added one small turbo at the beginning to get the car the exact speed that I wanted. And it was a little off center, so I moved it back to center. And so the beginning honestly doesn't seem that bad, and because of that better drift entry, the hop actually doesn't really matter that much. I think I also gave the player a bit extra room to recover after the hop and to turn in the actual right direction. And the natural, and since it was a drift to the right, moving to the left after the hop actually feels quite natural. So this drift that I'm working on right now, it felt a little cramped to me, and also the section after the drift, to me was just a giant straight line. You drifted to the left, and then you kind of just went forward for a few seconds without much steering input. So since we're drifting to the left, we're going to initiate the drift, still move a little bit more to the left after the drift, and then have to turn around or curve around back to the right. Like I just placed that S-bend back to the right, and now I'm testing to see how nice that feels, but that will also eliminate the straight line feeling and give the player constantly something to do. And I did use the half bank to flat 3 long because we are working with higher speeds. I typically like to stick with full vanilla, but with speed tech in these faster maps, sometimes you don't really have like the vanilla blocks aren't a great option when trying to handle that much speed. So I'm not against like custom blocks or anything like that. And now for this drop down, this is probably the part of the map I spent the most time working on, and it's super blind. So I'm just gonna try to make it as friendly as possible. Especially coming out of here, like you cannot see the landing zone at all. It's kind of like the start, only you can't press forward through it. You're in the middle of a route. Your trajectory is going to be different every single time. So I'm trying to get a landing where it will support several different lines, and using these skinny roads, trying a bunch of different like geometries, stuff like it's I mean, you can tell I'm I'm trying really hard. It's not going too well. And taking a look, I come up with something that maybe works, but then like it's not a great setup into a turn at all, so I get rid of it again, and it's honestly I'm kind of getting stumped on this one. I try a little bit to the right, a bank to the right and then left. That way you have that nice since you have to be on the left side to avoid airtime, and then swap to the right side. And since you're going to the right, it sets you up for a drift to the left. Trying that technique again, but going this fast, this in this small of a space, there's not enough room to properly set it up, especially if everything is in a straight line. So we're back to a little bit of a drop down, because I do think the drop down works pretty well here, but the problem is it's just too blind. So I'm gonna get rid of some of the scenery, give myself a little bit more room to work with, and instead of drifting this corner, I'm just gonna turn it into just a turn. And it actually ends up working fairly decently. The entry to the drop down is still pretty tight, but once you do get it, you can just turn through this turn. I need to stop saying turn. And it works, but because the entry is so narrow, I'm going to replace it with platform. That way it's going to give a little bit more space, a little bit more room, be a little bit more forgiving. And then going through, testing a bunch of different lines, it's still pretty narrow. I do widen the turn just to make sure that people have enough room, enough space, and I'm going to just add a second platform there, and this is very forgiving. It's a very forgiving drop down, which is exactly what you need heading at this high speed, this late in the map, making it blind. That way people aren't just having a guessing game this late in the map. It's like, I don't want to say it's fine, but it's better in the beginning of a map, because that's what people are going to drive most often. But the ending of the map, people are going to crash beforehand, they're going to restart runs, they're not going to get to the ending nearly as often as the start, and that can be a really, like, it feels really bad to just have a really hard obstacle right at the end of the run. So I make it as forgiving as I can without hopefully making it too boring. But I'm going to go ahead and basically just kind of shift this entire like little house hut thing. I don't know, it looks cool though. I'm basically just going to shift it over, because once again we have that kind of like slalom feel to it, but this ending drift here, you are not given enough room. I managed to buy one more tile of space from the previous turn, and even then it is nowhere near enough. But once again, we have the idea that we are going after this kind of like slalom, we're going to the left, which means we're in a perfect place to set up a drift to the right. And that's honestly, it's a really good tip that I haven't really mentioned yet. So glad I mentioned it. Glad I talked about it here. But here, I kind of just realized I'm not going to be able to line up the finish. So I'm just trying to make a decent last turn here. And I want to kind of keep the idea of the risky fin, where if you're going fast enough, you can just drive straight into it, whereas the slow finish is more off to the side. So I'm actually going to place a risky fin. I know, it's crazy. But that you can get to the risky fin from the top of this, I guess, like from the top of the banking, you can go over the railing and into the risky fin. And if you take the drift really well beforehand, then that's naturally where you're going to want to be. That's where the car wants to end up anyway. So it ends up being like a pretty smooth risky fin, and I test right there. The safe fin is perfectly fine to get to. So I will be honest and say that my fixes for this aren't perfect. Even when validating, there were still, like, the beginning wasn't as perfect as I really wanted it to be. But, you know, I wanted this video to come out sometime this year. So I do make a small adjustment to the beginning, but tech is definitely the style. Even with speed tech, where I build it, I leave it for like a week, I come back to it, I tweak it, rebuild some parts, leave it for like another week, come back to it, rebuild some parts. It's a game of just small adjustments until it finally turns out the way that I want it to. And that's really the biggest thing, the biggest tip I can give for tech is, if there is a corner that feels awkward that you're second guessing, change it. I don't care how, like, soft the second guessing is. If you're second guessing, people will find it awkward. It's happened to me so many times where I'm second guessing this one element, but I convince myself that it's fine. It's not that big of a deal. I release it, and then people say like, "Oh, great map," except for that one part. And I'm just like, darn it. If I just listen to myself. So listen to yourself. You're worth it. But with that, I'm just validating a run. I'll show my final decent run throughout all this. But yeah, tech takes a little while, but we got through it, and it was a fun build. All right, one more to go, and it's a bit of a wild one. Black and Red Dream by Equian, hope I'm saying that right, is definitely weird, but I don't mean that in a bad way. The route seems to be kind of a jumbled mess of different elements and ideas, but there are the core ideas of a dirt road mix with some engine off sections. Every once in a while, I'll get a message from someone telling me that they're frustrated. Their maps don't seem to be taken as seriously or receive good feedback from map review. And I think taking the ideas of this map and fine-tuning them a little bit will be a good example of what to look for. Basically, the biggest problem with this route is the lack of flow. Elements don't lead well into each other, and sometimes the car feels more like a pinball. Flow is a topic I've covered in the past, but it's still an abstract idea that can be hard to convey with just words. So I'm pretty excited to hopefully show everyone what I look for and where I would take this concept. Just a warning though, I'm not going to be taking a look at specific sections, but rather the route as a whole, so I will be changing quite a lot. But let's get started. And now it's time for the final build section of the video, and this is the biggest rework because I'm basically going to be deleting almost every single route piece here, but it's not because I think the route is like inherently a failure or anything like that. I actually think this route's really interesting, and I actually really like what inspiration I took and stuff like that. But what I'm basically doing here is the beginning was awkward because you're gearing up in the middle of a dirt turn, and you could get the gears clean, but it was super finicky, not really intuitive. So I'm just making it so that you get up to gear on pavement. That way you don't have to worry about the gears. And I'm just kind of testing. The outward bank slope can make it makes it a little bit more interesting, so it's not just a regular turn. And you do have to angle your entry to the dirt right to kind of catch that left side of the S-bend to get smoothly up. But now that we are in I believe it's fourth gear. Yes, we are in fourth gear. I want to keep that fourth gear at least for this uphill here. In the original, you do lose that fourth gear once you get it from the turn, but also you don't always get fourth gear from the original dirt beginning, so it's really weird, and you feel like you're being punished for getting that fourth gear on the original map. So I want to be sure that it's intentional here, at least a little bit. But that being said, I do think that people harp on gears a little bit too much, so I'm gonna play around with some gears here, and I'm actually going to have the car land in third gear up here. So that way, in the beginning, everyone gets fourth gear on the pavement. There's no question. You are getting fourth gear. And then once you land up here, you're landing in third. There's no question about it. This is what the map was built for. And I actually want to highlight the engine off pieces, because in the original map, I want to say there's 2 engine off spaces. And honestly, we can go harder we can go harder with that idea. We can add more. Why not? So I'm just trying to come up with a smooth transition, and I am staying away from ghost blocks and from free blocking, because this was a console map. I did have to turn this from the console editor to the PC editor, and so I really want to make sure that all the edits that I do for this route can be replicated on console, because it'd be really, I don't know, it would be kind of dumb if I was like, here's how to improve your console maps. First, go into Ghost Block. It's like, that's not really helpful. But yeah, so I'm having the landing be with engine off. Although it does get a little cramped, and I think it's a little too long with that low engine off speed. So I bump the engine off back a little bit so the car will get a little bit more speed. You can have a bit more control over the car as well in terms of not sliding, because you are on dirt, and if you slide on dirt with engine off, you slow down. So it adds to a little bit of a challenge of trying to slide as little as possible, which makes the route pretty interesting, or at least this beginning pretty interesting to me, at least. And I'm just making it so you turn around here, maybe a little drift as you get to the second part of this, but it's a little blind coming around just the turn and being it uphill and everything like that. So I make it so you just drive. You just have to drive. You don't have to drift. And then if you come up here, we have a little bit of a drift heading into the checkpoint there, but it doesn't. It's not really smooth. So I'm actually going to add an engine off, and one thing that I do find is you actually, with the engine off, you don't need to drift. It's just turning into the checkpoint, and honestly, I kind of like that. And then we have a small little drop down as a little, I guess, transition into engine off red booster, which was in the original map, the engine off red booster down there. And I actually kind of like the way it's playing right now. We're using the engine off, and we're playing around with gears a bunch of different speeds through all of this. And now I guess it's time for fifth gear. So after the engine off and red booster, it features 2 left-handed asphalt turns, and it was a little samey, so I wanted to try to play around with maybe one gear 5 asphalt turn, and then maybe a dirt turn, and that might be interesting because, like I said earlier, you don't want to slide. And throughout all this, I'm just making sure that everything can flow into each other. Like, you don't need to make super sharp adjustments. Like in the beginning, where I have the, I guess right before this section, where I tried out the drift, but I turned it into just a small engine off section leading into the checkpoint. There was actually just kind of like a network of turns that was actually ended up being a neo slide, which definitely was not intended through this. So I definitely wanted to change that. make it a lot smoother. And now after 2 left-hand turns for this, there we go, dirt looking a lot smoother. Needs some extra room though because it is more of a slippery surface. But there's one, oh, okay, hold on, no, changing it back, trying it again. But there is one problem that I'm kind of having with this, and that is we have 2 left turns here, and in the original route, the next turn after this, yeah, so I'm gonna drive from the beginning, make sure everything's still fairly smooth. But after these 2 left-hand turns, there is still another left-hand turn, and 3 left-hand turns in a row, that is going to be a little much. So this is the first point where I really make a difference, and I'm going to move the entire route. That's why I'm deleting a lot of the scenery pillars here, is sometimes my computer gets really laggy if I highlight a bunch of things and move them all at once. So I'm going to just move. So I got rid of a lot of the scenery blocks, and I'm going to try to move things over without crashing my PC, especially since I am recording. Thankfully, it works out. I really should have saved before doing that. I save after, which is not what I should be doing. But now, since we just had 2 left-hand turns, I'm going to turn to the right. And since we moved everything, I do have to pass through all the checkpoints again because they are kind of counted as newly placed checkpoints. There's no memory that you would normally have with the flying respawns. So yeah, just making sure to get a clean run here. But that's with flow, it's such an abstract concept, but you don't want too many of the same elements. So I'm trying not to have 3 left-hand turns all in a row. I'm trying not to have the same dirt turns again and again. And we've used engine off quite a bit up to this point, so I think it's fine for the middle of the track to not use engine off. So I have a turn to the right, and I think we have a small little road drift into some more dirt. So I'm going to have I try a 2x2 dirt turn, but there's not, it doesn't feel great. It's too tight. So I go with a flat 3x3, and honestly that ends up working pretty well. And I'm going to take that, I'm going to and since with the 3x3 dirt turn, the car is slowing down and you want to be on the outside, it actually ends up leading perfectly into the flat to banked downhill 2x2 turn, and it ends up feeling really smooth. I'm testing going on the outside, staying on the inside, does it all work? And it actually does. So and since we're on the outside there, it leads pretty nicely, and on the outside of a left-hand turn, it leads pretty nicely to turning to the right, and that's what I'm going to test here. Trying to make things smooth as we come out here, and there we go. It actually ends up working out really well. But in the original route, the engine off comes back at the end, so we had a nice break from the engine off. So I'm going to be looking to have this little drop down that was in the original route as well. And then it's time, if we look behind that checkpoint, there we go, it's time to bring back the engine off. So another engine off dirt turn. We want to set up to the right and make it to the left. I think it was a little too cramped, but with this, there's now enough time to properly set up on the right hand of the track, or right side of the track, to make that left-hand turn. And with the checkpoint right there to reset the engine, works out fairly well. In the original, there was a little drop down to a black platform, so I wanted to add a drop down to a black platform, because even though I'm kind of working the entire route at this point, like, it's still the same ideas that the original had. It's just with a more of a focus on making everything flow together. And so we drop down to the black platform a little bit, and I'm going to add a little bit of a jump at the end into a right hand dirt turn, because the turn before was a left, so now we got to go to the right. And it's a little bit of a tricky balance, because if you just do left, right, left, right, left, right turn, people call it the snake route, because you're just turning left, right, and it's basically just a squiggle. The more comfortable you get with the idea, the better you get at it. The more you can kind of hide the fact that you're doing the left, right, left, right. That's why it's so important to use different elements and different turn like severities and stuff like that can help help hide the left right stuff. But it's still there, because if it's not there, then it kind of feels a little bit bad, where you're just kind of driving the same stuff over and over again. But of course, we gotta have a little bit of engine off at the end. A little bit of dirt is a little too cramped, so just kind of like a straightaway, but not a boring straightaway. This one has a hole in the middle, and that makes it really exciting. But with that, I kind of used the ideas of the original and made it in a way that, one, has a lot more flow and a lot more thought put into of where is the car supposed to be at the end of each of these elements, and where can I put the next element so that it rewards the car for being there. And two, this should all be buildable in console. So you should be able to replicate what I built in console. I think they have all these blocks, and if not, then oops, I am so sorry. But the ideas remain the same, and the route, I don't think it would be a good route for track of the day, just because the engine off sections can be really punishing, and this does border on I think the route itself is like 53 seconds or something, which is a little long. But I think this would be a really fun map to have in more like kind of those lighter competitions. I'm talking like Grenadi's big monthly Yak Cup. I think this would be a super fun map to put in there. Although I think it's a little long for there. If you want, you can shorten the finish a little bit. But I think in those more relaxed tournaments where people aren't like expecting to play the most polished maps in the world, I think this would be really fun. With transitions and stuff like that, consoles are at a severe disadvantage, but I still wanted to show that you can make some console-friendly transitions and have them work out fairly well. And this route also does play around with gears quite a bit. I mean, you go from 4th to 3rd to back to 4th to 5th to back to 4th until the end. So it's, yeah, you get a little touch of everything. Because honestly, I did not want to just hammer this route into, well, I guess into the dirt. Pun intended. But I did not want to hammer this route into the dirt and just turn it into some boring dirt road mix. I wanted to keep the engine off and actually kind of enhance it and play off of it, because I think that those wild ideas make maps stand out. And even though the map itself probably would be considered more competitive or whatever on without the engine off, I think it stands out a lot more. And honestly, I would not have made anything like this route if it weren't for this map being submitted. So this was just really cool to build in general, and I hope this helps with flow. It's an abstract idea, but the best way to learn it is to try it. So try it. Pay attention where the car is supposed to be at the end of each route. Make sure you're going like left, right, but you want a variety of elements too. So it's all a balancing act, and it's a skill. So if you struggle at first, you'll get it eventually. And with that, that is going to wrap up my route video. I wanted to do a lot more than my scenery video because I will admit I did play it safe, and I think I accomplished that goal. I want to say thank you to everyone who submitted a map. It's really cool that people were willing to put themselves out there on maps that they knew had problems. I'm sorry if I didn't review your route. It's not because I hate you, I promise. I only had a limited number and I wanted to cover a wide variety of styles. So if your map was not selected, it might be kind of similar to one that I did, and I would pay attention to that section. If you have any comments about anything you would do differently, or maybe stuff you want to see in the future, let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this video and want to see more Trackmania mapping content, you are in the right place. So I would really appreciate it if you like the video and subscribe. Let me know you want to see more of this. I do plan on making this a regular series. And if you want to submit your route for the next time, or scenery, because the next one of these will be back to scenery, probably, go ahead and join my Discord. A link will be in the description down below. And I also stream on Twitch, where I do fun things like viewer map reviews, viewer tournaments on maps you guys build. And as of recording this, we're wrapping up our first mapping competition. So I'll be streaming the results of that. And if you want more information on future mapping competitions, join the Discord. There's lots of reasons to join it. But with the self-advertisement out of the way, I just want to say thank you guys so much for taking the time out of your day to watch my video. I really do appreciate it. And now I think it's about time I got off the struggle bus and was finally confident in my ability to build routes. All right, I just got to get the door unlocked here. It's sorry, it's a little stuck. I might need some like elbow grease. it's not opening. That's okay. I've got like the emergency exit in the back, and oh, those hinges look rusty. They aren't moving. I've got the windows. No, the windows aren't breaking either. They're not moving. I can't leave the struggle bus. Why? Because someone save me. Someone get me out of the struggle bus. I can't leave.